morning, everyone. We are Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audrey Boissonou, and I'm here with Kevin Casey. And today we are joined by Steve Murray. Welcome, Steve. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Audrey and Kevin, how you doing today?
Very good.
Fantabulous. So we have a few announcements before we take a dive into all of this. First thing is, I was talking to California MBA, and their legislative day is coming up April 23rd in Sacramento. So I would highly recommend everybody join them if they can. Also, they're doing their Mortgage Innovators Conference May 8th through the 10th in Anaheim, California, and it is free to all lenders this year. They know that, we're all making money hand over fist. And so their contribution is to help us go to a conference and not charge us anything, which is beautiful.
What was the date of that again?
May 8th through the 10th. And we've been to that conference. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I highly, highly, highly recommend it. We'll have a link where you can sign up, etc. So stand by for that. Also, I just want to say goodbye, Q1 2024. Hello, Q2 2024. Do you have your business plan for Q2 done? I bet most of you haven't. So I would just like to refer you back to January 9th when we had Katie DeLasto, and she gave us the 6-minute business plan, which I think Kevin did it. And how long did it take you, Kevin?
It took me 2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. I think it took me 3.5. I probably read the questions. He probably didn't. So there you go. And so anyway, if you want to just bang it out and not have to like take a super deep dive, that would be a good way to go. Otherwise, also just want to throw in there, refis are 31% of all business. So anyone who says that there are no refis out there is incorrect. All right, so we have acknowledged that we knew that there was an NAR settlement for the last couple of weeks, but did not want to dive into it until the dust had settled a little bit. I'm just not into hype. I don't want to talk about a bunch of blah, blah, blah. I want to talk about the real deal. So Steve Murray, you are an advisor for Housing Wire, correct? And you have been in the business longer than me. And
I think I've been in the business longer than you've been alive.
Well, that would not be correct, unfortunately, because I am really old. However, it is so Steve has a long history of he does you do a lot of mergers and acquisitions, right? A lot of
Yes.
valuations of companies, but you've also done a lot of court work. And tell us a little bit about that so we understand why you are so good at commenting on this and why your opinion matters.
Well, so this is 47 years in the residential real estate industry, 37th year as a consultant. I previously co-founded Real Trends. We were in publishing, conferences, and consulting work. We sold the conferences and publishing work to Housing Wire, HW Media, at the end of 2020. I'm still retained as a senior advisor for them. In my career, yes, we've done well over 4,000 valuations of brokerage, mortgage, title, escrow, property management companies, mostly all of them in the residential real estate space, all 50 states and Canada for the most part. Along the way, because of the research and publishing that Real Trends did, I was identified now, it's closing on 20 years ago, was identified in a Sherman antitrust case and was retained actually by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission in a case against a realtor MLS. And they qualified me as an industry expert witness, which is a fairly rare thing. Subsequent to that, I testified, I think it was 3 other Sherman antitrust cases, 1 large RESPA case, bankruptcy cases, fraud cases, etc., along with testifying as to the valuation of real estate enterprises. So I have some background in enough to make me dangerous, lacking real deep knowledge about antitrust cases, but enough to be talking about it.
Yeah,
Oh.
definitely enough to be talking about it, and
Right.
definitely more credible than a lot of the people I've heard yapping about this for the last 2 weeks. So it is really, we're really glad you're here. So let's just start with the basics, shall we? So we know that we have a $418 million settlement with NAR,
Right.
and then take it from there. Just walk us through where
Well, I mean, first of all, I am no expert to know, is this truly settle all the claims? No, that's not what I understand.
correct.
There are still some cases outside of this case. There are state court cases that at this point are not included in this settlement. I know they are talking about a potential of what we might call a roll-up of all the cases, consolidate them into one courtroom, get the whole thing settled. That doesn't, people need to understand, that does not prohibit other plaintiffs from suing. There is still a buyer side case or two in Illinois, for example. It does not stop the DOJ from pursuing its own. And they've said they reserve the right to do that, to object to this settlement, or to enhance it, or to intercede is the term in the settlement. I think we already have felt their presence in this. The FTC could have its own view of these things, and that doesn't block anybody at the state attorney general offices in all 50 states from choosing to bring their own actions against our industry. So anybody who says, okay, this settles everything, we can all go back, and no, not quite.
That's
Not
what I
yet.
thought. Yeah, that's what I've been thinking.
So
Right.
can you
Not there
give us,
yet.
can you give us a brief look into the history of buyer agency? Because there was a belief at one point that you can't not have representation for buyers, and that there was this idea that we would, like balance the interest and work this out so that a real estate transaction would not be lopsided. You've got a seller who can afford to pay a commission, you have a buyer who can't afford to pay a commission. Those of us in lending who have transactions periodically where you've got a for sale by owner, for some reason there's no buyer's
Right.
agent. It's a nightmare, honestly. It is,
Right.
it is really tough on everyone because people don't know what they don't know, right? So you've got buyers and sellers on who you hear go, oh, well, why do I need an agent? So the value of realtors and lenders sometimes, but realtors in this case, have not been clearly defined throughout the years. It's sort of been a given, it's part of the process. They've always had a choice. People have had a choice. They don't have to use a realtor. But
Right.
at this point, we're in a position where, you've got TV shows who talk about, you can like sell a house and make $1 bazillion in 30 minutes or less and drive a Ferrari and, get all the hot chicks, and they just make it look like it's so easy. And
Yeah.
if really a trained professional, it's not. And the last 2 deals I've closed recently would not have happened without really solid professionals on both ends of the
Right.
transaction. And so the public, it doesn't know this. It's not being conveyed by the White House, by the media, by anyone. And so but it's going to be a disaster for everyone if we go to this model that they're hoping for, where, oh, I don't have to pay a commission. Oh, you don't have any value. I don't need you. So,
Right.
again, so we used to have I don't know much about this. So tell us what you know. This whole idea
Yeah,
around
I'll be brief. Really starting in the mid to late 80s, up until that time, all agents who work with buyers were legally fiduciary, were sub-agents of the listing agent, whether they were with the same brokerage or a different brokerage. The structure was they were sub-agents, they were under the control and the direction of the listing agent legally, and they owed their duty to the seller. In the mid to late 80s, we started to see the advent of people pushing for buyer brokerage. Without going into all the details, over a period of 6 to 10 years, at the state level, since it's, real estate brokerage is not federally managed or regulated, it's regulated at the state level. We shifted and offered some different options where an agent working with a buyer really had a lot more duties to the buyer, regardless of who was paying them.
Yeah,
And that took years to get that settled. And each state has a little bit different how that works.
right. So like I
Um,
know, for instance, like in California,
Yeah.
it's a full disclosure state. So there's any things going wrong with the property, that has to be, the seller has to fully disclose it, versus Oregon, it's not a full disclosure state,
Right,
and they can hide stuff that they don't want to disclose to the buyers.
right. Well, and there's the reasonable person should know or should have known, or and all this. Anyway, it's shifted away from buyer agency or sub agency to represent. The best way I put it is the buyer agent works on behalf of the interest of the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But it took this took 6 to 10 years. It didn't like somebody goes, hey, let's shift this. It took years to get it sorted out. Some states did it faster than others. We went away from what had been caveat emptor, buyer beware,
Right.
to full disclosure to both parties of everything, or as much as you can. So then, but all along, even for the entire time of my career, the MLS was it was not just a bulletin board, it was an offer of cooperation and compensation. Okay, so now we are where we are now. And the settlement says you could no longer use that vehicle, the MLS, to communicate offers of compensation from the seller to the buyer agent. Cannot do it through the MLS. Now, for those people listening in, there are some people, I've read them, I've seen them, they go, oh, just put it in the comments section on the MLS that this particular seller is offering compensation to the buyer agent. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
This settlement says you cannot do that in any way, shape, or form through the MLS. Don't do that unless you just really like getting sued by people who said they violated the settlement. And by the way, if you're an agent and you do that, you just dragged your broker into it too. Thank you very much. You cannot use the MLS to communicate that there's an offer of compensation, period. Okay?
It's too bad there's no other way to do that,
that
though,
is the
Steve.
safest place to be. Yes, maybe you could say contact seller to find out about compensation. You know what? My clients, I'm saying, don't do it. You're inviting yourself to get sued. And if enough people out there do it, you're basically inviting the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission. They've already said what they ultimately really think needs to happen is absolute ban on any compensation from the seller to a buyer's agent, for any reason, at any time.
That's what
They've
the
already said
DOJ
that.
wants?
Pardon?
That's what the DOJ wants?
Yeah, they've already said it in black and white. That's what they think it'll take. Okay. But they're waiting to see how this is gonna settle. So what can I do? Well, you can be off market, off MLS, and you can offer on your listing as long as it's not through the MLS. So you market it to your company or your personal website, your email, your social media, direct mail, go knock on doors if you need to and do handouts. You can't do it through the MLS. And so that leads to, okay, we're going to have to find new ways to communicate to abundant number of agents who work with buyers that, yes, we're offering compensation or we're not. Okay, it's actually pretty straightforward. You can do it, you just can't do it through MLS.
Right.
And by the way, you can't do it through seller gives concessions of X amount of money, which can be applied to the buyer agent comp. No, it's explicitly says no. So I've probably carpet bombed that dog into the ground.
Are we
Don't-
clear?
That was
People, are we
necessary.
clear?
Perfectly clear. Don't
we
use the
understand.
MLS to do this. Now, as I've been, all of us who, especially myself and many others, I'm sure, being asked a lot of questions about a lot of detail. What if this? What if this? I said, look, read the settlement or get the NAR has done a really good job with their FAQ about the settlement and what you can do. But you can't use at the heart of it, you can't use the MLS anymore to communicate anything about any compensation being offered to a buyer's agent.
Right.
Now,
And I get that because they consider it steering.
Right. They're trying to
correct.
make
And
sense.
and DOJ has said that in black and white very clearly. And then, of course, we had a writer last week say, well, of course it's steering, and there's nothing wrong with steering.
I know.
Heaven help us all.
I
It's
know.
like, okay, great. So you just keep doing that, and I can just retire and say, I told you so.
Uh-huh.
Not my concern anymore.
Right.
All right. So what does this mean by July or thereabouts? MLS has got to take those fields out. People have to be retrained. We have to get buyer agency agreements up to snuff. And of course, then in addition to the practice, we are starting to hear on a very spot basis, anecdotal stories of sellers who've read some of this stuff going, you know what? I understand I don't have to offer a co-op anymore.
Right.
Now, so it's not just the buyer agent that's going to be affected here.
Right.
Yep.
And listing agents will be pushed probably by a growing number of sellers to say, tell me why I should upfront offer a co-op, because part of the settlement, I didn't make this point, a buyer's agent and a buyer can submit an offer to the listing agent and ask to be compensated. That is legitimate. That's legal. They can, here's our offer, $500,000, and we want you to pay so much to compensate the buyer agent. They've said that's fine. Okay. So sellers may start to take the position, look, I don't want to offer it up front, let them ask for it. And presumably that's going to happen. And is that a big number of sellers? How would anybody know?
Well, we have a comment in the chat from Jill who said, heard today about a realtor represented buyer in California submitted an all-cash offer to her buyer for her buyer. The offer included a 3% buyer agent commission to be paid by the seller. The counter came back with one change. The seller paid buyer commission was reduced to 1%. I mean,
Right.
so now okay, so what's interesting about that to me, there's a number of things, but one of them is, okay, you don't know how much work that buyer's agent did. Have they looked for 2 years? Have they gone to 600 properties? Have they, you know what I mean? Like, what is involved, and also what will the transaction involve in and of itself? Is there going to be a lot of negotiation had? Are there reports that need to be had and digested and analyzed and you know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
especially with an all-cash buyer's agent, buyer, that buyer actually has the ability to pay for the agent's commission.
yeah, on an all cash offer, you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, more ability. But here's the thing. I've heard that chatter too. And most of my clients are the men and women who run brokerage companies, 20 agents up to 2,000 agents.
Mhm.
As I've told a couple of them in the last 2 weeks, I said, get over yourself. When did, as I told one of them, I said, how much time you have to spend developing an agent, and the more time you spend developing an agent, the lower the split you pay. Look, we all have clients and customers that we spend 40 hours trying to get something done that could have taken an hour with another customer, but we don't vary our fee. and I hear this
We're not allowed
grinding.
to. We're not allowed to.
We're not allowed to. Yeah,
We-
in our
No,
rules.
no, I mean, I hear this grinding of teeth about that, and I'm going, what world do you live in?
Yeah,
We all have clients and customers that we made this huge fee and we spent 3.5 minutes to get it done because of whatever. And then other clients, I've had clients where my average hourly rate was probably 3 cents.
Oh, maybe. We all joke about that.
Yeah.
All
And
of
we
us
all
Talking to the
do
choir.
that, right?
yeah.
do.
Now, what, so we don't know yet. Anybody says they know, they're crazy. We
Right.
don't know how many sellers will now shift and say, you know what? I'm paying you, but whether I have to pay somebody else, let them ask for it.
Well, we're starting to hear from some of the minority the groups representing minorities, and
Right.
they're pointing out how bad this is for somebody who, you know, especially first-time buyers, the underserved, who we have supposedly been so interested in taking care of the last few years. All of a sudden, that's gone out the door completely. And when we've got homeownership rates at 45% for Black people and 74% for white people, and now those groups are saying, wait a minute, this is going to affect us way more than anyone else. It's going to be interesting to see how loud that drumbeat gets and if that has any impact on this at all. I mean, would the Department of Justice listen to that kind of thing? I don't know.
The plaintiff's attorneys do not care whatsoever about the impact on the practice of real estate brokerage in this country. If you look at the language, not the monetary part, but the language that was in their settlements with Anywhere, Remax, and Keller Williams, there was none of this big change. This was somebody else, probably Department of Justice leaning on the realtors to do this now as opposed to waiting on DOJ to smack them later. They simply don't care. And they assume, as you've read numerous stories, oh, the buyers, it's not going to be a problem, because you probably read the same stories I did. I mean, they're going to be able to pay less for houses.
Oh, please.
I said, because wait a minute. I told two reporters, Wall Street Journal and CBS News, I said, wait a minute. You think that because sellers' commission costs go down, they're going to drop the asking price of their homes, particularly in this kind of market?
Yeah.
Well,
No.
yeah, I said that. I'll bet you any money you want to put up into an escrow account, that will never happen. On a spot basis, it might, but not overall. So no, the buyers get no benefit of lower home prices. Now, now the buyers, either they have to pay their agent or they have to try to get the seller to pay their agent. But absent that, they'll be going direct to a listing agent who does not have a fiduciary duty. They might have a transactional broker duty, but not a fiduciary to the buyer. And did I mention that a third of the, 30 or 32% of all the buyers are first-time young, low-income minority,
Uh-huh.
Yep.
first-time home buyers who
You
have
have
never
no
done this
idea what they're getting
before.
into.
They've never done it before. They have no idea what they're doing. Now, I've also said there will be people and new businesses or restructured companies that will rise up to find a way to serve that market in some fashion, because it's too big a market.
Right.
And I'm sure that's what the masters at the US federal government, the DOJ and the FTC, and I'm sure just like the economists at the Fed Bank in Richmond, who also, by the way, published a report saying house prices will come down. You just have to stand in amazement that we have these ivory tower academics and reporters. And I, as I've tried to tell all my clients and our readers and viewers, The time for the gnashing of teeth and wailing draws near. We need to move on. They are wrong. They got it dead wrong. This is not going to solve anything. But yes, the plaintiffs bar, they're going to make a lot of money. To the sellers, there's a chance that seller commission costs will come down, probably more likely than not. On the downside, the industry gets hamstrung as to how to most effectively market properties, and buyers are the big losers. We all know it. We absolutely know it. But you know what? That's not going to change anything. So let's move on and figure out how we're going to make a living helping take care of buyers, which we always have.
Adapt. We adapt.
That's it.
What we do. We're very adaptable. I would just like to pause for a moment and take an economics 101 breath and remind people that home prices are paid based on supply and demand, not based on how much someone paid for commission. So, and again, for all of these people who have they bought properties when they were $30,000 in value, and now they're selling them for 2 or 3 million. I mean, and by the way, most sellers become buyers again. So they're going to turn around and be in the exact same position that they just subjected someone to if they're going to jerk someone around over, whether or not their agent should be paid. I mean, it is so hairy. It's just unbelievable. And I heard you say somewhere, Steve, that 90%, 92% of the people you surveyed choose to use a full service brokerage, even though they have options that are otherwise, because they know it's the most effective way to get a buyer is to use a buyer's agent. So it's going to be really interesting to see this play itself out, but oy vey.
But you have to, now this is a big general statement for most people who aren't paying attention. This has been going on, this kind of conduct by the federal government, giving aid and comfort to the plaintiffs bar, has been going on particularly since the start of this administration. Probably the best thing that I can think of, the most recent thing, if you stop and think about it, is that the U.S. Department of Justice filing an antitrust case against Apple. Now, Apple didn't buy its way to its market share. They just built really great stuff.
That's really easy to use.
They built really great stuff. And I'm an iPhone, iPad guy, but I'm a PC computer guy, right? I got the best of both worlds, way I look at it. They didn't get their dominant position because they bought competitors and closed them down or shoved them out of the way.
Nope.
Nobody believes that we need the joint employer rule, which now says all franchisors have joint liability with their franchisees for employment practices and compensation.
Oh, wow.
Nobody said we need net neutrality. It seems to be working just fine, but nonetheless, this administration's FCC is trying to wreck it by regulating it. And I could keep going on and tell, but this is all of a piece. And the DOJ weighing in on this is their chance after 30 years to kill the realtor organization or put a dent in it. And they will, and they have.
Well, so
again, we talk about that for 3 hours. But putting that aside, the rules are in a broad sense, they're pretty straightforward. Read the settlement. I keep telling people sections, where is it here? It's section 58, I think 58, 59, 60 has most of it. And NAR has put out a really good FAQ, how people should practice. Let's get on with it. Don't try to skirt these people too close. You're just inviting you and or your brokerage or your fellow agents in the market who might try some cutesy end run. You don't need to.
Right.
You've got off-market opportunity. You've got websites, you got email, you got social media, semaphore or smoke signals if you need them, but there's a way to communicate to the market that, hey, I'm representing a seller. And my seller is willing to pay share a fee with the buyer agent if you bring us a qualified buyer. Others may not choose to, and a buyer agent is going to have to get over this. I mean, people are talking about, well, we're going to put together a 105-point list of the value. I said, really?
I've seen the 91-point list. It's actually pretty comprehensive and pretty
Yeah.
awesome, and it's worth looking at and familiarizing
Yeah,
yourself.
and you know, a buyer's gonna, first-time home buyer, after about, what do you figure, 2.5 minutes, their eyes will
It won't
glaze.
take that long, Steve. You're giving them a lot of credit. No, I'm,
Right,
by
I should
the
have
time you
said a
get to
minute,
number
right.
8, they're like, all right, I'm good.
No,
I
no,
just, there
I
is,
don't think we don't know, because we're in uncharted waters. And I have said in another article I wrote yesterday, it'll be published sometime. I say, here's the thing. We don't know how sellers and buyers will react. And number one, they won't be monolithic. They're going to be differences.
yep.
And you made the point, Audrey, earlier, and I wrote about this last November after the trial. I said, it's fascinating, isn't it? We're supposed to think that we did something wrong when over 90% of people freely chose to use our system.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
think Apple.
Yep. All Samsung
And
people
by the
are going
way,
to be pissed
as I
right now,
pointed
but it's
out,
fine.
there were half a dozen FSBO sites in Kansas City in that district. I found 8 or 10 or 12, I forget the number, of discount flat fee listing brokers. I found there's plenty of supply of alternatives.
Yep.
Our own Real Trends research going back over 20 years showed the consumers majority were aware there were alternatives, including doing it yourself.
Right.
Yep.
But they willingly chose the system we built. But again, I come back, let's move on.
Yep.
But we don't know how buyers and sellers are going to react. We just don't know. And we don't, and it won't be monolithic. It won't be, oh, 85% are going to do this. We have no idea. We don't know.
That's right.
And we won't know until it's like the clash of titans in July sometime, when all of a sudden all this stuff disappears from the MLS. And I'm trying to tell my clients, stop blaming NAR and the attorneys, stop railing at the plaintiffs' attorneys. It does no good. Let's get on to retraining and recommunicating with our agents, and agents are going to have to convince buyers and sellers that they're, again, as they always have, I'm worth it.
Yeah.
So there is a campaign that's happening right now where they are notifying sellers across the country via postcards, an email campaign, letting them know about the settlement, letting them know the details of how to opt in, opt out, whether they can, how they can file their own, whatever. So it is, and so I read about realtors who are really taking this as an opportunity to get in touch with their clients and have a conversation with them about it. Let them know they do have options, help them understand it. Some buyers, sellers have indicated that they didn't want to hurt their realtors and didn't want to do anything that would have, and so it's really interesting. Like, you've got more than one side to this. It's not just that, oh my God, they were all out to get us. It's, hey, we get it that you did something for us and now we want to, we don't want to hurt you either. So but I think that the direct, shocker with me, I think the direct approach is a way to go, just because it is much better to address the elephant in the room than to hope that somebody hasn't seen it. This is a conversation on all of our next doors, I think, like mine, where you've got sellers who's like, I've sold my own houses and everything has been fine and great and I can do it myself. And I'm thinking, dude, you don't even know what you don't know. You don't know what you didn't, and by the way, you get a buyer who decided that you didn't know what you didn't know later, they're going to sue you instead of the realtor. So great idea. I mean, it's like, anyway.
Well, I mean, one of the things I've shared in the past, when this kind of structural change happens, yes, our industry is prone, when they have structural change happening, to get angry start to denigrate new forms of competition.
Right.
I mean, after 47 years of having a front row seat to all this stuff, the way the industry treated Remax when they started to emerge 40 years ago, the way the industry treated the internet, the way the industry reacted to Keller Williams, the way it reacted to EXP and Compass. I mean, I'm apt to tell people a quick story, which is I started Real Trends with a partner in January 1987. And our original goal was to produce a 12, 16-page monthly print trends newsletter. There wasn't one. So we did that, and we spent, I don't know, 8 to 10 years building up a really good business of almost 3,000 subscribers. And it took somebody, now the internet arrives in the mid-90s, and it took about 2-3 years for somebody, a new competitor, to come in and to say, I'll do all that news and trends, maybe not as good as theirs, but close enough, and it'll be free.
That's right.
Online, free, ad supported.
Did you adopt, Steve? Did you adapt?
Yeah, well, yeah, I told people, I said, you notice I'm still here, right?
Right.
I mean, trust me, my partner and I at the time were going, can you believe this?
Yeah.
I mean, the funniest part of the story is that guy did that. He hit us and hit another one of our competitors, early competitors, hit us both, forced us to change everything we were doing and go online, ad support, all this stuff. And then after he got all that settled in, then he comes back and start charging subscription fees.
Right. Of course.
Of course they did.
Of course he did.
Of course they did. And it's like cable TV, ad-free cable. Well, that's like Prime Video.
Yeah.
Or Netflix. Yeah,
Amazon.
until we need to add ads.
Yeah, well, that's what
Oh,
Amazon.
there's somebody just asked me who that competitor was. It was called Inman News.
Ah,
Okay.
there you
Inman
go.
News. Good question, my friend.
Yep.
My point is, I know the men and women of this industry, grown, spent my entire life and career with them. Once they get by the grieving and the anger and whatever, they're real good at adapting. It's painful, but they adapt and they go, well, we're just going to have to do this or
Just like
do
the
this.
customers. The customers adapt.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, arising out of this will likely be multiple companies, different service platforms to help buyers, because it's in the seller's best interest to have somebody working with a buyer to help them understand what they need to do to get a closing.
100%.
And maybe it's not going to be as rewarding financially as it was per customer, but maybe you end up having to do 2 or 3 times more customers than you did to make the same living. Okay. What?
According to our friend Dave Stevens, 45% of realtors did 0 transactions last year. 0. So I think, again, if there are certain people who aren't using this as a profession, aren't treating this as a profession.
Oh,
what we do is
a side hustle.
It is so important, I think, that we are trained, that we are educated, that we are really advocates for our buyers and borrowers. And so part of this may weed out some of the realtors who are not real realtors, right? There have been a lot of questions about what about the lenders, the investors, Fannie, Freddie, VA, FHA. What are they going to do? Because VA specifically has a component where it says that the VA home loan benefit cannot compensate the realtor directly. So NAR has addressed this with VA directly. They have asked the question and are waiting for an answer on
So is NBA.
Well, right. So well, yeah. Yes. Okay. So anyway, the question has been asked. We're waiting for an answer. As a ledge conference in DC a couple of weeks ago, like the GSEs were not talking about this yet. So so stand by.
There's all kinds of relationships and regulations. They're going to have to be reviewed. Like NAR is a clear cooperation rule. Well, wait a minute. If the only way I can market a property is off MLS to offer a co-op, Well, they got to get rid of the clear cooperation. They're going off market's going to become
The way-
widely prevalent. Widely
Okay,
prevalent.
Steve, when that happens, if that happens, how are appraisers gonna get comps for appraisals? I keep wondering.
There's that, you know, but
I mean,
that's not important.
nobody's talking about that. I'm like, what
No,
are
no,
appraisals?
don't confuse the issue.
Oh, you mean with an actual valid question? Yeah, you're right.
No,
I
I mean,
Do
no, I
all
mean,
title records, Audrey.
Oh my God, that is not
Yeah.
how it's done. I'm saying there will have to be a complete redo of how appraisals are done. Because
No, but
and
you
we're
know-
already seeing this actually in rentals because MLS doesn't usually have it. First of all, it doesn't have all the rentals on it at all. But also for things like, Airbnb and VRBO, those are not on there either. So like realtor or appraisers have a really hard time doing rent surveys because all that is morphed and changed so much. So now I think we're gonna have to have, I mean, this needs to be looked at like yesterday, in my opinion.
yeah, I mean,
It's a big, big
well,
problem.
and
It's-
there's not one trade organization that can do it by themselves.
Right,
And there's not one state regulatory body or one federal regulatory body that can wave their wand and, oh yeah, we'll take care of it that way.
right,
This is going to take a couple of years to hash all of this out until everything kind of resettles into the normal heartbeat of the housing market.
right.
And it's going to take time.
Yep.
And there's going to be a lot of casualties and there's going to be winners. And the question is, what do you want to be? You want to be a winner or you want to be a roadkill?
Right,
I
right.
mean, it's and by the way, my little company is not the only one who's ever faced something like that. I mean, how'd you look to be those poor guys at BlackBerry? I mean, they just
We can all
flat.
acknowledge years later they kept their heads in the sand way too long, right?
They just, what was that?
Yep.
But I'll tell you this, I wrote an article years and years ago, since I read a lot about business outside of our industry, and it's instructive for those listening in. And what I did is I went back 40 plus years. I looked at the beginning of the 1980s, and I said, if you look back then, Sears was the largest retailer in the United States of America. GM had 50+% share of the US auto market.
Wow.
The big three TV networks had over 90% viewership,
Wow.
and IBM had 70% market share of the installed computer power in the world.
Right.
You ask the question,
Yep.
what happened?
Yep.
When I studied them and read lots of articles about those companies and decisions they made, it came down to a few things. And it was, number one, they were dismissive of new competition.
That's right.
They were arrogant about their own position. And at the wrong time, right then, they all got distracted. Sears, which had done well with Allstate, figured, oh, well, we can do well with Dean Witter and Discover Card and Coldwell Banker in Sears stores.
Yeah.
And IBM, what? They literally read the book that Gates and about the whole PC and things, and Gates and Ballmer, who bought DOS from some other guy, and that's for the IBM PC. And Gates said, we threw out the idea that, okay, we'll grant you that license, but we can also license DOS to anybody else who makes a computer compatible with yours.
Right.
IBM's arrogance said, we're IBM. Nobody makes a computer like us. Greatest transfer of wealth in human history.
Wow.
That one decision.
Right.
Because then Dell and Compaq and the rest is history. GM, what'd they do? They bought Ross Perot's company, EDS, to get into technology.
Hmm.
And now they have, I think, 16 share.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
on the TV, forget the three TV guys. I think combined they don't have 20.
Yeah.
No.
How do you lose 70% market share in 40 years without really trying? Well,
Yeah.
you're dismissive, you're arrogant, and you're distracted.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, My word to everyone is if you are so disposed, get a copy of the settlement, read section, what did I say, 58 to 60 something, or get the NAR FAQ on the settlement, study it, figure out how you're going to adapt. Understand that we don't know exactly how buyers and sellers will react, and it won't be all one reaction. It'll be all kinds of reactions. It's just not going to be the homogeneous, smooth, just functioning market we had. It won't be.
It won't be. And also important to note that the judge still hasn't finalized the settlement. Is that still correct?
Yeah, it could be months. It'll probably be months before they decide to do that. And how that happens, I'm not sure. What does it take a judge so long to do this? You know, it's like, I mean, it's not hunting season in Missouri. I mean, so he's not out hunting.
But it only took the jury, what, 4 hours to come up with their verdict?
Less than
Right.
3.
Take a judge 6 months to figure. I don't know. I'm being sarcastic. It's not
No, we're
helpful.
all being sarcastic because it's all a bunch of crap. So, okay,
Right.
so we had a note here from Peaches. Maybe the DOJ can get the GSEs and lenders to allow buyers to finance the buyer's agent commission, since they seem to know what's best on how the real estate industry works. So, and she goes, that's the point of my previous sarcastic comment. The DOJ has no clue how qualifying for a mortgage will affect buyers, especially VA buyers. And I think to your point, you said they don't care, right? I think that's the bottom line is they just don't care.
In fact, it's very unclear to me. Now, again, I'm no expert. I've testified for the Federal Trade Commission and twice on the other side facing the DOJ.
Right.
And you know, the truth is, in each case, those people were smart. They were interesting just because they were across the table from me in several cases. You know, they had no evil intention. They thought what they were doing was the right thing. None of them had an axe to grind against a real estate agent. But institutionally, the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission has had it in for this industry for a long time. Trust me when I tell you that, a long time.
We believe you. We believe you, and that you would know. Somebody asked if we have the PDF of the FAQs from NAR, and we will try to get those and embed them in our YouTube channel when we post this video. So, Kevin, please help me remember, because God,
I think I've hold on, let me see.
If you have them, just send them to me, and then that would be awesome.
Yeah.
So
I'll look. I'm sure I do, but this file is now grown to.
It's all right. We'll find them. Don't you worry about it. And
okay.
And then we'll make that. We'll make that accessible.
And I apologize, but I need to go to another call.
Well, good news. I was prepared
minutes.
for that, kids, because guess what? There's a lot of economic stuff going on. So, Steve, thank you so much for being here. And we will.
Nice to meet you.
We will.
Real pleasure, Kevin.
We will keep all this front and center, and we'll let you know if we have any questions. Thank you again. So
yeah, and hey, Kevin, try to get Audrey to liven up a little bit, would you?
I work on it. It's hard. It really is.
Wait a minute. A dude who wants me to liven up, sarcastically, of course, because Steve, he's also got in the comments he should control me more. Control me. Yeah, he told him that was a fool's errand. That is never happening. So
thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much, Steve. Have a great day. All right,
okay, Steve. Let's
keep going. So we have Jobs Week. Just want to make sure we cover that real quick. So tomorrow we have ADP. Their estimates have been revised up for 148,000 new job openings. We'll also have mortgage applications tomorrow, as we do every Wednesday. Thursday is initial job claims. Friday, we have BLS, which is expected to be up 200,000 jobs. They're expecting the unemployment rate to stay at 3.9%. And with the Fed being very focused, I mean, their dual mandate is contain inflation, which they've done such a great job with, and also full employment. So they are realizing that inflation is not going to come down to the 2% number they are hoping for, at least as fast as they were hoping. So they are very, very focused on this 3.9% unemployment rate. So you've got 17 Fed members who don't believe that will go over 4.1%. So that's something to watch for as the week goes on. But you know, Jobs Week is always volatile and super fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so oil prices have hit $85 a barrel. Did you see that, Kevin? Highest in
You-
6 months.
Yeah,
And
you can
what?
thank the Ukrainians for that one.
Well, it's not just the Ukrainians, but yes, there was a drone strike in the third largest refinery in Russia, so that happened. And then also,
And the funny thing about that is you also blame the Republicans for that one. Because they're not
oh
funding
my God, okay,
Ukraine.
so
So
we are
Ukraine
so
doesn't have to
okay.
follow
Hang on,
US
hang on,
guidelines, and now
hang
they
on.
can attack Russia. Therefore, they're wiping out the things, and it's all coming back to haunt us.
We are so good about staying agnostic. Like we are really, we don't get into the whole, you know, you're better than me, you're worse than me. We don't get into the Republicans, Democrat thing. I'm like, holy crap. So, I mean, we really bend over backwards to not go there, but occasionally there are like, I just wanted to punch someone this week as they were stating that it was the,
Well,
yeah, exactly.
75 or 76% of the US population wants to fund Ukraine, and yet they have it. And because they have it, then Ukraine doesn't have to follow their US guidelines on not attacking Russia. And
Oh,
therefore, they've been able to take out all of these oil refineries in Russia. And so Russia's had to stop exporting oil because of it. Lo and behold, we have higher gas prices.
well, okay, but we also had the Iranian embassy in Syria that was bombed. And so now they're vowing that they're going to strike back, which, I mean, that's what we want. We want some more conflict in the world because that'll help
Oh,
us,
it's always
right?
good. Listen, I can tell you that we're in for a whole lot more of that stuff as we
I know. Well, the
see
problem
more
is
noise.
not okay. There was always conflict in the world. I mean, people are like, oh, it used to be so much better. No, we just didn't know about it because we didn't have social media and the news, and we didn't know what was happening in every single person on Earth's neighborhood. Like, we only knew what was happening in our neighborhood. Now we are unfortunately privy to what's happening in the rest of the universe, and it's not pretty most of the time. It never has been. Okay, so CoreLogic home price index in February. So it's interesting because we had Dr. Hep on last week from
Yeah,
CoreLogic. And they are very conservative in their forecast. So their data is solid as a rock. Like they're always really, really, their data doesn't get revised, but their forecasts are always a little less than what reality is. They err on the side of caution. So they had forecasted that we were going to have zero home price appreciation in February, and it went up 7/8, which is fantastic. So it's up 5.5% for year over year. They're forecasting that we're going to be up not 7/8, probably 7/10. Sorry. Forecasting 4/10 up in March and 3.1% year over year, but they could be a little low on that. So we'll see.
they tend to. It's really funny because you do the month to month. Like, well, wait a minute, how can we be up 7 points and only project 3 for the year?
Listen,
But actually,
Kevin, we're going to have all the home prices are going to plunge because people are going to pay less in commissions and the sellers are going to want to give all of that to the buyers. Duh. Okay. So, just just so you know, the odds for a Fed rate cut in June have now been lowered to 59%. It was much higher than that before. Obviously, the Fed has indicated they're in no rush at all to hike rates. They're going to be patient. They say the economy looks strong and they don't think there's much chance for a recession. And after talking about the R word for the last 2.5 years, I'm like, really? Okay, so we'll see. So watch the employment, and no, the next Fed meeting is May 1st. The next one after that is
June 12th.
oh, very good.
Wow, look at that, huh?
Oh, who saw that coming? Holy moly. Yeah, so we know that
It's going to happen in July.
wait, it would be
That's
funny.
got
It
July.
would be funny if there's no Fed meeting in July.
I know.
Anyway, so we know that
I don't think there is actually. I think they skipped July. I think it's like August 1st.
they do skip sometimes, but anyway, okay. So PCE came out last Friday. It was not what everyone was dreaming of, it came out about where it was expected to come out, by the way. So a headline went from 2.43, it was 2.451 from 2.433. They're like taking the decimal points out like as far as they can to like show any movement at all. And core went down slightly, which is the Fed's favorite measure of employment in inflation. It went from 2.884 to 2.784. I mean, but nowhere near 2%, kids. So anyway, personal income was up 0.3, yet personal spending was up 0.8% month over month.
Go
So
credit cards. Go credit
are
cards.
spending our brains out. Savings rate is the lowest since December 2022.
What savings rate?
I know, it's at 3.6%, and pre-pandemic is at like around 10%. So we are not doing great, kids. So there's a lot of cash out refinances to go be good to.
A lot of them.
Yeah,
That's
I
for
can't put
sure.
that sentence together. Sorry about that. Anyway, and then pending home
By the
sale.
way, I just stop you real quick. I used our guest
Roll.
projections on rates or home appreciations last week to work on a deal. So she projected that home appreciation would be about 6% for the year. And so I had a client think, well, we're thinking about waiting. Because I was trying to do a buy now versus,
Yeah,
you know,
don't do that.
right. And so,
No,
but they're
no,
like,
no.
well, if they buy now, they have to pay, it was 9% they're gonna have to pay on a buy now program. Oh, that's higher than we want to pay. And I'm like, it's 2%. And it's only for a few months. And so it's gonna increase your home's value is gonna increase by 6%. So you're gonna lose more money by waiting 6 months than you are gonna pay by paying a little bit higher interest rate for a short term while you sell your other house. And it was so interesting doing the gyrations when the math was there. And I used all their numbers. How much do you think homes are going to appreciate? Oh, 5%. Oh, that's conservative because, you know, CoreLogic's saying 6, but we'll go with your 5%. And you go through the whole math and you say, okay, so it's going to cost you this much more to buy your $1.2 million home now. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not $1.2 million anymore. Now it's closer to $1.3 million, but okay, you don't mind losing $300,000 on that purchase price. Oh, wait, but we want to pay not 2% more on the mortgage for 6 months.
So interesting, because next week we have Dan Habib joining us for MBS Highway, and guess what they have? They have a little widget thing where you can do
Very
you
cool
can calculate
calculator.
the cost of waiting.
Yes.
You can do it officially. So Kevin,
I
I
didn't
like
even
it.
know that. I fed it right to you. How'd that work?
Right, exactly. So surprise, Kevin. Next week, Dan Habib. Yeah, I finally confirmed that. And then the week after that, we have Dr. Lawrence Yoon, who's the chief economist for NAR. That would be the National Association of Realtors. And by the way, won't it be interesting to see what he has to say?
He won't be political, but he's
Oh, I don't
really
think
good
he'll
at
be political.
economics.
And honestly, I'm so sick of all this crap being political. Like, why can't it just be the facts? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the facts is I see them, you see them, you know, a reasonable person sees them. So I just want to put a little plug in there for Dirk, who loves to have me say his name on here. He says the real issue is dependency on oil from other countries. Why have we shut down our own oil production?
Actually,
Making it not political. Let's just go out on that note, shall we?
I can totally go off on that one too.
Okay, no. Kevin's boyfriend is a guy who likes to talk a lot about uh other countries and oil production, et cetera, and actually it's extremely interesting, but we don't have time for that crap because we are done, kids. So we are going to go forth, we're going to have a great week, and we are going to close loans and go get some refis since they are a third of the market, and we will see you next week, same time, Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, with Dan Habib. So with that, thank you, everyone.